Okay, you're on.
Well, in 1984, I was negotiating a contract in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for their cellular system for the Miami area. And it was a $13 million system. And we had to negotiate all the details of the contract. For example, one of the things they wanted in the contract was that there's bad lightning damage in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area to all the radio systems. And they wanted to write into the contract that lightning was not an act of God. And that we had to have cell sites that would withstand a direct hit of lightning. So anyway, that's the kind of thing. Well, there was a guy named Larry Goodall who was a lawyer in Richmond, Virginia. And we hired him to go with me to negotiate the contract. And I was approving bills to the tune of $30,000 to $40,000 a week. We paid him $465 an hour for his service, plus expenses. And that was in '84. Now that's quite a bit of money. And anyway, he drove a Datsun 210 sedan. Have you ever seen one of those?
No.
Well, it's a real, back in those days, Datsun was a real cheap car. And his looked like it'd been washed and not ironed. It's all beat up. And so you saw my cane with the Jaguar head on it. Well, back in those days, I thought Jaguar was a really neat car. And the attorney that worked for our customer in Fort Lauderdale was a Jewish guy named Matt Leibowitz. And he drove a great big Jaguar sedan. That big, Jaguar on the hood. And we stand there, Larry and I were standing on the back stoop talking, and I said, "See that Jaguar over there?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "That belongs to Matt Leibowitz, the guy that you're arguing with up there. And at the rate we're paying you, you can buy one of those Jaguars pretty soon." And he said, "Bob," he said, "I would never buy a Jaguar." And I said, "Well, I hear they're pretty finicky and hard to work on and temperamental running." He said, "I'm not talking about that." He said, "One of these days, the books are going to be balanced. And when they are, I don't want to have to explain to my maker why I spent about $100,000 on a car." He said, "There's too much suffering in the world and too much inequality among people for guys to spend that kind of money on themselves." And he said, "So I don't want to have to explain that." And I stooped down and started untying my shoes. And he said, "What's the deal?" And I said, "I feel like Moses at the burning bush. I'm standing on holy ground. I'm going to take my shoes off." And he said, he got a big kick out of that. But I said, "You don't see a lawyer with your kind of attitude." And he was a combination professional electrical engineer and an attorney, licensed in the state of Virginia. And a guy that's a combination professional engineer and a lawyer is just unheard of. And so, boy, he was giving that guy from that was helping the customer, giving him fits because he could outthink him real quick. So anyway, that's my story. One of these days, I'd like to write that up and entitle the story "One of These Days," because I think that was kind of one of those insightful moments for me as a Christian, is that one of these days it's going to be equaled out and the books are going to be balanced. And I don't want to have to explain why I wasted money on something like a car that could go 160 miles an hour when the speed limit was 55. Anyway,